because this is a special year for Bellarmine. You all know, 125th anniversary of the founding of the Ramakrishna Mutton Mission. It was founded at Balaram Bose's house on May 1st in 1897. Okay. So this is the 125th year. Where all of the centers are supposed to have some type of special program throughout the year. Now, our center is 25 years old.
Wow.
Yeah. So our silver jubilee year. So, any mathematicians here? What does that mean? We started our center on the 100th anniversary, right? So 1897 was the founding of the Mutton Mission, and 1997 was the founding of our Vedanta Center of Greater Washington, D.C. So it's a special year for us, coinciding with the 125th anniversary of the founding of the Ramakrishna Mutton Mission, that Swamiji himself, of course, initiated. Who sows must reap, they say, and cause must bring the sure effect. Good, good, bad, bad, and none escape the law. But whoso wears a form must wear the chain. Too true, but far beyond both name and fame is Atman, ever free. Know thou art dead, Sannyasin bold. Say Om Tat Sat Om. They know not truth, who dream such vacant dreams as father, mother, children, wife, and friend. The sexless self, whose father he, whose child, whose friend, whose foe is he, who is but one. The self is all in all, none else exists. And thou art dead, Sannyasin bold. Say Om Tat Sat Om. There is but one, the free, the knower, self, without a name, without a form or stain. In him is Maya, dreaming all this dream. The witness, he appears as nature, soul. Know thou art dead, Sannyasin bold. Say Om Tat Sat Om. Where seekest thou that freedom, friend, this world nor that can give? In books and temples vain thy search. Thine only is the hand that holds the rope that drags thee on. Then cease lament, let go thy hold, Sannyasin bold. Say Om Tat Sat Om. Say peace to all. From me no danger be to aught that lives. In those that dwell on high, in those that lowly creep, I am the self in all. All life, both here and there, do I renounce. All heavens and earths and hells, all hopes and fears. Thus cut thy bonds, Sannyasin bold. Say Om Tat Sat Om. Heed then no more how body lives or goes. Its task is done. Let karma float it down. Let one put garlands on, another kick this frame. Say naught. No praise or blame can be, where praiser praised and blamer blamed are one. Thus be thou calm, Sannyasin bold. Say Om Tat Sat Om. Truth never comes where lust and fame and greed of gain reside. No man who thinks of woman as his wife can ever perfect be, nor he who owns the least of things, nor he whom anger chains can ever pass through Maya's gates. So give these up, Sannyasin bold. Say Om Tat Sat Om. Have thou no home? What home can hold thee, friend? The sky thy roof, the grass thy bed, and food what chance may bring, well cooked or ill, judge not. No food or drink can taint that noble self which knows itself. Like rolling river free thou ever be, Sannyasin bold. Say Om Tat Sat Om. Few only know the truth, the rest will hate and laugh at thee, great one, but pay no heed. Go thou, the free, from place to place, and help them out of darkness, Maya's veil. Without the fear of pain or search for pleasure, go beyond them both, Sannyasin bold. Say Om Tat Sat Om. Thus, day by day, till karma's power spent, release the soul forever. No more is birth, nor I, nor thou, nor God, nor man. The I has become the all is I, and bliss. Know thou art that, Sannyasin bold. Say Om Tat Sat Om. Swamiji was a gifted poet, but an inspired poet. I think of all of his writings, I like his poetry Second best. I like his letters best. His letters are fantastic. But after that is his poetry. And they were written on all different occasions. Many of them were gifts to people. Many of them were included in letters. Somebody's birthday or some special event, or even the passing away of someone. This Song of the Sannyasin, this was composed that great summer when Swamiji was in Thousand Island Park with a handful of chosen devotees, special ones there. And during that summer, Swamiji actually gave monastic vows to a number of the devotees there. So possibly he was inspired because of that. Swamiji's ideal was always the ideal of sannyasin. We say Yati Raja, that was his, if he had any sense of identification, that he was really a monk from beginning to end, top to bottom. So this really is an expression of his deep innermost feeling. Some of his poems, he was really fully inspired. When we think of, for example, Kali the Mother, really in an ecstatic state. That is a fantastic story of how he went off by himself, and he was in this tremendously high mood. And after he wrote it, he said the pen fell from his hand and he fell down unconscious. He was so inspired by that. So there's a little history behind all of them. There's another interesting story with this Song of the Sannyasin that it wasn't found till many years later. That we see it was one of the workmen that was doing some repair work, and he found the manuscript. Otherwise, it was the original manuscript was lost, and so he showed it to Swami. I think it was Swami Nikhilananda at that time, and then he realized what a valuable thing it was. So then it was saved. So I think we still have that original. So this was the summer when Swamiji was inspired. This is all of the recorded talks we have under the title of Inspired Talks. And it was mostly this Mary Funk, or Funky, who wrote the memoirs of that. So she wrote, one afternoon, when Swamiji had been telling us of the glory of renunciation, of the joy of freedom, of those of the ochre robe, he suddenly left us, and in a short time he had written his Song of the Sannyasin. So this is under inspiration. This wrote it right out. A very passion of sacrifice and renunciation. And Sister Gargi, Marie-Louise Burke, she wrote, Swamiji may have written this now famous poem on the afternoon of July 23rd, the day following his giving of monastic initiation. So this was about the middle of that time. It was in July and August when they were there. And he gave vows to three. He gave vows of renunciation brahmacharya to three, including Sister Christine. And we don't know exactly who and everything. There were some were given brahmacharya. And later, there was a doctor who was given sannyasa. Yeah, became Swami Yogananda. Why Swamiji gave him the same name as Yogananda, I don't really know. But probably, after giving the vows, he was filled with that spirit, that fire of renunciation. So, yes, spontaneously. This is because Swamiji was a seer. He was like a Vedic seer. Huh? How they all of the Samhita hymns, the hymns of the Samhita period, the Vedic hymns, they were just spontaneously composed, or we say heard, the Shruti. That somehow, whether the rishis were inspired or whether they heard something, we don't know, but some type of inspiration. So Swamiji was like a rishi that way. We have to look at his poetry the same way. There was another reason that one of the projects that Swamiji had at that time was to start a magazine in India. You know, he wrote many things back and forth. And the Song of the Sannyasin was the first of the poems that he sent there to be published. And this was in which magazine? He sent this to Madras, to Singa Butterfly, his Madrasi disciple there, to start this magazine. The Brahmavadin was started there. Vedanta Keshari was started there. They later went to the Mayavati. So it was one of those two. Let me see. So on July 27th, 1895. So this is shortly after, because of the summer of 95. So this may have been part of the inspiration for Swamiji to write it also. He wanted to send, he wrote many things that he sent back to be published. He was very anxious to see these magazines get started. Also, the Udbodhan, all of that wonderful descriptions of his travels and through Egypt and those places and everything, he wrote that to be published. And it's interesting that his language was so modern and really unique that when I was in college and I took some Bengali courses there, then we read Swamiji as an example of pioneering literature style. That before that, nobody wrote in the Chalti Bhasha, in this conversational language. So it was really very radical what Swamiji did. And so even in a college classroom where they didn't care who Swamiji was, right? Just an example of his language was so fantastic. So this was for the Brahmavadin, which later became Vedanta Keshari. So Alasinga got that, on July 30th, a week after it was written. And Swamiji wrote, "The Song of the Sannyasin is my first contribution for your journal. Don't feel depressed. Don't lose faith in your Guru. Do not lose faith in God. Oh child, as long as the inspiration and faith in the Guru and God is within you, nothing will be able to defeat you. Pay attention to the paper. Make it a great success." That means this magazine. This was a period when all reports were coming back about negative things about Swamiji and everything, that there were rumors circulating that he wasn't a real sannyasin and taking forbidden food and things like that. So many of his disciples, they were wondering why all this bad press was coming and everything. Then later, Swamiji was so relieved to see that there was some appreciation of the work he had done in the West. They're very interesting letters that he wrote at that time. He wrote so many times. Is not a single person in India who will raise a finger to at least write something to say that this Swami Vivekananda is not a cheat and a liar and everything, and a little appreciation what he's done. He said, "I don't care for myself." It sounds like, why should Swamiji want name and fame? But you know what his reason was?
Yeah, he did not want the name of Sri Ramakrishna and his father.
No, his mother.
Oh.
Yeah, he wrote it. He said, "I don't care what anybody says about me. The one thing that hurts me is if news could get back to my mother, who gave up everything. I renounced everything for her. I've only caused suffering my whole life, and now she thinks that I am a cheat and a scoundrel. How much it'll hurt her." He said that was why he was so concerned. Of course, Thakur's name, that would be part of it, but that was the specific thing that he said about his mother. Yeah, so this is what I was saying before, that many years later, a carpenter was doing some repair work on the house, and wedged between some of the wooden slats, he must have taken, the outside of the wall off to do some inside work. He found a piece of scrap paper there, and this was the original version of the Song of the Sannyasin. And he knew that it was something special, so he kept it until it reached Swami Nikhilananda. And so fortunately, kept it. Now, the question is, how relevant is this to householders? The big question. And or how relevant is it to modern sannyasins even? You know, when the difference between householder devotees and the monastic devotees is not so great as it once was. We also have nice places to live. We get nice food. We don't beg our food. We don't says the sky is not our roof, the grass is not our bed. We have a nice place to live. That we don't have all of these different types of tapasya that the traditional sannyasi did. When we think of the real meaning of sannyasa, what do we mean by what is the real meaning of sannyasa? Anybody?
Internal renunciation.
See, Sri Ramakrishna, you always emphasized internal renunciation. That the attitude is the main thing. For the sannyasi, renunciation has to be both internal and external. But for the householder, the internal, and even for the sannyasi, if it's external, not internal, the internal is the most important thing. So every devotee has to be a little bit of a sannyasi. You know, but you will know this, huh? What is the definition of the real sannyasi that we find in the Bhagavad Gita? It is a very beautiful verse, chapter 6, first verse in chapter 6. How does it go? An ashrita? Karma phala. Karya karma karoti yana. Tasannyasi trayogicha na niragnya na chakriya. So who is the real sannyasin? The one who performs all of his action anaskrita without caring about the fruits. Karya karma, who does his bounden duty, then he is the sannyasi, not the one who gives up fire. That means all of the obligatory types of worship that were done in the traditional household. So giving that up and all the rituals and everything, just taking the okra, that this is the real sannyasin. So according to Sri Krishna and Gita, that the householder who does everything out of a sense of kartavya, karya, that this is the duty, this is what we're supposed to do in life, not for any personal reason, not for any personal gain, not caring for karma, then that's the real sannyasin. And the other sannyasin who simply takes the outer garb of the sannyasin is not considered to be a sannyasin at all. If there's that fire of renunciation isn't there. There's some beautiful verses, you know, the Bhajya Govinda. Some beautiful verses about these phony sannyasins. Udara nimitta bahukritavesha, that they'll wear different types of garb, everything, for the sake of the stomach. Yeah. So there are sannyasins like that, that many take to this life because they're escaping, because they have no means of livelihood. They can get their food. In India, everybody knows, you put on this garb, you can knock on any door. Maybe not so much in modern India, but at that time, you'll be protected. It's Thakur used to say it's like a dog that has a dog collar with an ID on it. People won't beat it. They know it belongs to somebody. So who is the real sannyasin? The one who has that inner renunciation. This is the most important thing. So the Swamiji didn't like these distinctions very much. You know, he in his Karma Yoga, he has a very beautiful one of his talks that each is great in its own place. That he talks about the renunciation of the householder. You remember the story that he tells about the king and the sannyasin and everything, and then how they go into the forest. They end up having to spend the night under a tree, and there's a family of birds there, and the birds are saying, "Oh, guests have come into our house. What should we do?" And one said, we'll have to get a fire so they stay warm. And then he flew off and found a little fire and started a little fire there. And then the father bird said they had nothing to eat. And he said, let me give my body to them. And he flew into the fire so that they would eat. And then the mother said, the father has done that, it's my duty to also do it. And then when they all did it, and then the king and the Sannyasin, of course, and the princess was there, they couldn't take it. But anyhow, Swami said, this is, if one wants to be a householder, they have to have that ideal of sacrifice. Sacrifice for the greater good. And if one wants to be a Sannyasin, he was the one who did Swayamvara. And he said, no, I don't care about marriage, anything like that. And he left. So anyhow, it's a beautiful story that each is great in its own place. So I think that if we do a little conversion to the language that we have in the Song of the Sannyasin, we find that it's equally valid for the householder. So that means that when we talk about the sky, thy roof, the grass, thy bed, it doesn't mean that the householder is supposed to go and sleep outside. We have to take things in a little bit of a symbolic way. It was really in Thousand Island Park. They were householders. There were a few of them, just a handful that wanted to lead the type of monastic life. The others were householders. So Swamiji, he understood that the spirit of renunciation is important for everyone. And even when we read in the Gospel of Ramakrishna, how many times Thakur talked about renunciation when it's either all householders or just mostly householders. There may be times when there are one or two for the future months are there. But how many times his emphasis on renunciation was so strong that M always had a tremendous desire to renounce everything, and practically begged Sri Ramakrishna. And Thakur said no, that you'll be an example of a Gri Sannyasi. See, this is a new ideal. A new ideal. And M was the exemplar for that. That the heart of the Sannyasin, but in the context of the householder. So this Song of the Sannyasin will really, this will be the ideal, both for the Sannyasin who is literally trying to renounce everything, and for the householder who's trying to practice mental renunciation. So we start out with this first verse. Wake up the note, the song that had its birth far off, where worldly taint could never reach, in mountain caves and glades of forest deep. So this is really where the whole tradition of the yogi, that they always wanted to go and to remove themselves from society. Now, Swamiji, he had a great appreciation for that. In fact, he used to say that my whole life, all I wanted to do was go into the cave and meditate. And somehow, mother would not allow that to happen. Something would happen, it would draw me back down. But he said that this was my real nature, to be a thinker, not a doer and everything. But this old man, Thakur, that somehow he bound him by this Maya, so that he would do that work in the world. So Swamiji had this ideal that to withdraw from society, to go into the mountain cave and everything. But second ideal was that the realizations and the teachings of Vedanta had to be brought to the marketplace of the world, brought down from the mountain cave, so that all of society could benefit from it. So he saw both things as equally important. That he blamed a little bit this monastic tradition for removing itself from society too much. And his ideal of the Ramakrishna mission was really to counteract that to a certain extent. The early idea was that the sannyasins should have nothing to do with society, that this attachment will come or the mind will get polluted somehow, and that they should remove themselves and have their own kind of separate society. So they would go, of course, from place to place, and they would give some teachings and everything, but more or less they try to remove themselves, to withdraw a little bit. And the Swamiji, he understood that it was to the detriment of society. The second thing he understood was that those who were coming to join, to become monks, were not qualified to go into a mountain cave and spend their whole life just in meditation and everything. That means us, this is our generation also, and even the generation after the direct disciples were qualified. But he knew even after that, the ones who came after them, that they weren't qualified to do it. Now we know this by one great statement that Holy Mother made. When the plague came to Calcutta, this was around 1900, the plague came, and Swamiji said that we're monks, we can sleep under a tree, let us sell Brother Mutt, and we'll use this money to raise funds to help these people who are suffering from plague. So they all got nervous, those brother disciples, when Swamiji made up his mind. There's not much you could say to him. So finally one of them, maybe Mahapurush Maharaj, one of them said, why not check with the Holy Mother first? Because they knew that whatever Holy Mother said was the final word. Swamiji would never go against anything that Holy Mother said. Even, when Swamiji wanted to go to the West, he had a vision, Thakur beckoning him. It wasn't enough. He had to get Holy Mother's approval. He had to write to her and say, Mother, that I have this desire, this opportunity is there. I had this vision of Thakur and everything, but you tell me, should I do it? Should I go to the West? He said, yes, my child. And then he was relieved of all doubt. So anyhow, he went to Holy Mother and she said, no, this isn't even yours to sell. And she said also that you're qualified, that means the direct disciples, to lead that type of wandering life, because they did it for so many years. They all, Swami Ramakrishna was a little bit of an exception, he stayed back, but all the others, they were used to that type of life. But she said those will come in the future won't be able to do it. They'll need a place like Brother Mutt and centers and everything. And they were young, they were coming as young men. The tradition in India was that people take sannyas towards the end of life, when they're finished with all their desires and they've done whatever they want to achieve, they've achieved it and everything. But these are young men who are coming. Later, of course, the young women, when Sharda Mutt came. And he understood that they had tremendous energy and they weren't fit to just do sadhana. That this karma yoga had to become a big part of what they would do, and that this work would be their worship. So we instituted that for the sake of society. Our twin motto, Atmajnanananda and Jagat. This is for the not just for the sake of society, this Jagat Hita, but for the sake of the monks. That this would be purifying for them. This would be the type of worship. This would elevate them, seeing God dwelling in all the beings. So even for modern day monks, we also have to do some little tweaking of this. If we won't take this as meaning that we should also go and live under a tree. And so I think the equally valid, the householder has to adjust it a little more than the monk, but still, it's this spirit of renunciation. So anyhow, it had its birth far off. So, and Thakur also, he made an interesting distinction about withdrawing from society and protecting ourselves and everything. He said, in the beginning, we have to do it. This was his concept of taking a small plant and hedging it about, putting a little fence around it until it gets a little bigger. Otherwise, the cows and the goats will come and eat it. So what does that mean? That means in the beginning, if we mix too freely with all different types of people, then our spiritual zeal will get eaten up. And this desire for enjoyment will grow more and more. So in the beginning, our environment is very important. Go into solitude, he said, keep holy company and everything. But after a while, when we get some strength, then Thakur says the tree becomes big. You can even tie an elephant to it, and nothing will happen. So, so this idea with withdrawing ourselves. Now, what does the householder do? Thakur has an expression, "Kone bone mone." Kone bone mone. It means that if possible, then we go off into the forest. We withdraw ourselves. Bone. Right? If not, then even within the house, within the home, we find a little corner where we can be by ourselves. We practice solitude that way. See, Thakur emphasized solitude. Dear Dongas, he said if you can do it for a few days, a few weeks, a few months, however much time you can do it, go into solitude. He emphasized that. So, and he emphasized it for householders. He would say, especially older ones who had a little bit of money, he said, have a little hut, build some little place, build a little bit far away, so that none of your relatives will go there, no one will bother you. You can go there, spend all your time in spiritual practice, spiritual reading, forget about the worries of the world and everything. So that'll be the ideal thing. But if not, then just within the house, kone. And if nothing else, mone. That means that really this is the real thing. The real solitude is within the mind. It is not anywhere else. So this practice of solitude and going away is very, very important. In monastic traditions, of course, we don't do it as much nowadays, but it was a great tradition for monks to go to places like Uttarkashi, and there's so many little kutiyas and huts and things that monks can go and stay there, and just spend their time in spiritual practice. Forget about everything else. They'll go begging your food, and begging the food means just there'll be these chatras, places where you can go and they'll distribute food. Many of our sadhus did. Our Swami Bhuteshanandaji, he spent some years doing that. And I did it for only 8 days. After my sannyasa, I went to Uttarkashi, and a tremendous atmosphere there. And there's so much, a city full of sadhus that if you go out in the morning, around 10 in the morning, you only see sadhus on the street, all with their little tiffin carriers, and getting some lukewarm watery dal and some chapatis, and that'll be their food and everything. But a tremendous atmosphere there. Swami Swananji did it for several months also. Uttarkashi, you saw the picture of him with the beard. You know that photograph? That was after he came back down from the Uttarkashi. A very nice story about Swami Bhuteshanandaji. When he went to Uttarkashi, two nice stories. One I just read recently. He wrote to Swami Shivanand Mahapurush Maharaj, was head of Bellarmine, president of Bellarmine. At that time, he was the one who gave him permission to go. He wrote that some wealthy man was there, and he saw that our sadhus were struggling. They were koshto, no nice place to stay, this and that. He wanted to give money to build some nice place where they could all stay together. And Mahapurush Maharaj wrote back to him, then if this is what you want and think is a good idea, then come back immediately. He said the whole point of the pasya is that you have a little bit of physical austerity too. It shouldn't be such a comfortable thing. And the other story is a very nice story that Swami Bhuteshanandaji, when he went to Uttarkashi, he inquired among the sadhus there that is there any room where he could stay? Because they would all know, yes, this is one place here, one place there. And so one elderly sadhu said, yes, come, let me show you a room where you can stay. So he took him to that room, and then the Swami stayed there, and he didn't see that sadhu again afterwards. So he asked about that. And they said, yes, that sadhu had lived there for many years. When he heard that the new sadhu had come who needed a place to stay, he vacated and just went out on his own someplace. Okay. So the sadhus with such detachment. So this is the really where this tradition starts in the Himalayas. This type of social. This is a very nice way where he starts this song, the Sannyasin. The song had its birth far off, where worldly taint could never reach, in mountain caves and glades of forest deep, whose calm no sigh for lust or wealth or fame could ever dare to break, where rolled the stream of knowledge, truth, and bliss that follows both. Sing high thy notes and Yasin bold. Say Om Tat Sat Om. Yeah.
What does that mean that
Yeah, I like questions, everybody. Yeah.
of knowledge, truth, and bliss,
Mm.
where roll the stream of that follows both? What are the both?
This is the stream of knowledge and truth. Bliss follows both of them.
Oh,
Yeah,
knowledge and truth.
Yeah. So
Oh,
this,
it's Satchit and therefore Anand.
yeah, no, they're not side by side. What Swamiji is saying, this is also very important, that the life of the Sannyasin is life of freedom. The freedom, that is a joyful life. And all spiritual life should be joy. This is a test. This is a test. If people are leading a so-called spiritual life, a life of sadhana, and they find it a chore, they don't get any joy out of it, then they're missing something. That this life itself should be joyful. This is sadhana. The meaning of sadhana is that we're striving to realize something, sadhya. Sadhana, sadhya. But there's a slight misconception that we should take joy out of it. It shouldn't be a cause and effect thing. It shouldn't be the means and the goal. Swamiji always said, unite them. Don't make a distinction. So if we want to achieve that highest bliss through spiritual practice itself has to be joyful. So this is exactly what it means. Swamiji is trying to show that this is a joyful type of life. See, it's the freedom of renunciation. It's the freedom of surrender. See, for the householder, we can substitute surrender and reliance on God, sharanagati. That will also give tremendous feeling of relief. Probably the best illustration of this is the story of the Avadut. From the Bhagavata Purana, there's a long section about this Avaduta who has the 24 different gurus, and one is the kite. Kite is a type of, it's like an eagle but aquatic. It catches fish. And Thakur tells this story, that relates it, how this kite caught a huge fish and is carrying it, looking for some place to put it down and eat it and everything. So it's carrying it in its beak, and all the other crows and other birds are coming. And caw, 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 they're making life miserable. Wherever the kite goes, they go after it and pecking at it and everything. And no chance for enjoyment, nothing, just clinging to it. And then finally, trying to fight off the crows, it drops from his mouth. And immediately the crows leave. And the kite is back to the peaceful state again, not bothered by anything else. So there's a Avadut. He said, the kite is my guru. And now I see that the joy comes from letting go and not from clinging. Right? We have one line from chapter 12 in Gita. This Tyaga Shantir Anantaram. That Tyaga, now it doesn't mean, again, leaving house. It doesn't mean that. Tyaga means letting go. Letting go. not clinging to things, accepting whatever comes on its own. When we do that, and it's a mental thing. This is the point. It's a mental thing, but we can do it, and it's a conscious decision that we can make. That yes, I won't worry about anything. I'll do my best. I'll try for the best possible result. But whatever happens, I'll let go of it. Then what happens? Shanti. Anantara. Anantara means that there's no gap in between. The second that the fish drops from the mouth, there's peace. It's not that it gradually it'll lead to something. The second, those who take to a life of renunciation and actually join, then there's that feeling that now I've made the last decision of my life. Now wherever the order, whatever they ask me to do, I'll do. Whatever comes, I'll accept. It doesn't make any difference to me that now I'm in the hands of the order. I don't have to think about anything or take responsibility. We take responsibility, but not personal. That this life is now given to the order. I'll tell another story about Swami Inspiration. He was my sannyas guru, and those some of the things are in English, but some of his nicest things are still in Bengali. Those of you who read Bengali, I think it's translated, is Kotamarito Prasango, is all of the lectures that he gave on the gospel. Well, it is fantastic. And this Bhavaprabha is another. There's so many beautiful books that he wrote. Anyhow, he was a brilliant thinker and very sweet and loving person. And what is the story I was going to tell? Tiaga.
Responsibility.
Oh yeah. Okay, good. Thank you. So
Good job.
he lived to be I think 97, something like that. And his health was bad. He had several operations and everything. And when he was the very end of his life, he must have been 96 or something like that. I don't know exactly. That he was admitted to the hospital with heart problem. And the doctor said that all the trustees were there. Swami Atmajnanananda, he was very close to him also. I think they said it to him that if we do another procedure, maybe a stent or something like that, then we can prolong his life. Of course, at his age, he won't live forever, but there'll be a recovery period. It won't be easy. That age to go through surgery is not a simple thing. That we hesitate to even mention it to him, that to put that burden on him and everything like that. So I think Swami Atmajnananda. So he went to him and said, "This is the situation. This is what the doctors say. If we do this procedure, then your life will be prolonged. So many of your devotees will be benefited, yes, by seeing you, having your darshan and everything. That it'll be a great blessing for everyone." So he said, "Or you agree?" So Swami Inspiration, he said that when I joined this order, I gave up all claim to even this body of mine. So I'm not qualified to even make that decision. If the trustees say that this will be for the benefit of the devotees and for the good of the order, then you go ahead and do it. I have nothing to say about it. See how free. He just given up. The Tiaga, the real renunciation. It doesn't mean that you have to go out and live in the forest cave or anything like that. That's real renunciation. That everything belongs to the order, everything belongs to Thakur, everything belongs to Mother, whatever our attitude is. So this is that feeling, and this is Swamiji's point. That bliss follows from that. Freedom follows that. Contentment. You know, Holy Mother made a great statement. She said, "Shoto shaman gunne, shantosh shaman donne." that there's no virtue equal to forbearance, and there's no treasure equal to contentment. So this contentment, it comes from letting go. Shanti comes, santosh comes just from letting go. Oh, what time do we, it's 8:20. What time do we stop?
9.
9 o'clock. Oh, expect me to talk that long?
Maharaj, could you repeat that? Shodjushan in the back.
Shodjoshan gun.
No such quality as.
There's no
tolerance.
virtue we can say equal to, equal to shodjo, titiksha, equal to forbearance, and shantoshaman,
Mhm.
No treasure.
no treasure, dhana. There's-
Contentment.
Yeah, so there's no treasure equal to contentment. Yeah, a great statement. Yeah, this titiksha, because they go hand in hand. They're not two separate, they're not two unrelated things. If we can put up with anything, if nothing will disturb us, this is the teaching of the Gita. If nothing can affect the mind, whether good comes or bad comes, this is one of the great themes here. This in the song of the Sannyasin. To let the mind not be disturbed. Let good come, bad come, it doesn't matter. This is whatever our karma brings to us. Let my mind not be disturbed by any of this. So if we have the titiksha, automatically we have contentment. And contentment is the greatest thing. Even for worldly people, and not in a negative sense worldly, but people who are not on a spiritual path, they don't have some concept of God realization, anything like that. We see that some at the end of their lives, that they feel that, oh, I've done my duty to family, to responsibility, to society, I've led a good life, I've contributed in everything, and I'm content. I've done enough. I can die peacefully. No, it's a great thing. And it's really not a small thing to have that type of contentment. It means it's a sign of a life well lived. But for a spiritual aspirant, it goes even further. That means that whether I get God realization or not, this is not in my hands. I do my best, I'm striving for it, this contentment. Now, the other side of the coin is this tremendous longing and yearning and vakulata and everything. That's for very rare few people. We want a little bit of that. We want a little bit of that, especially in the beginning. In the beginning, we want to have this tremendous longing, desire for realization and everything. But the older we get, I mean, if we get it in the very beginning, great. Yeah, but for most of us, it's a lifelong process. And this vakulata, sometimes it decreases. People wonder, when I first started, how much enthusiasm and longing, and I had to realize God, this and that. Now, 50 years later, where did it go? It matures. It turns into something else a little bit, into this type of contentment and surrender and understanding. And we realized that nothing was in our hands in the very beginning anyhow. But we had to do that. We had to have that tremendous longing and everything. So this vakulata, one type of devotee, and as I think usually in the beginning of spiritual life, and that sustains us throughout somehow. But for others, this feeling of surrender comes. You know, Thakur's story of the bird on the mast of the ship is a very, very important story, because in the beginning, the bird has to fly in every direction, has to exhaust all the possible means before it can have that contentment. That yes, now wherever the boat takes me, I'll go. I won't bother about anything. I've done everything I can. I know that through self-effort that I won't be able to get where I need to go. Wherever the boat takes me, that's where I should go. That's all. I accept that. So the santosha comes at the end. So vakulata and santosha, they're not so opposite as it seems. Right? We can have that longing for God, and at the same time, at the end, feel, I've done what I needed to do in this life. I made a good attempt and everything. Swami Inspiration, he had that great statement at the end. I've done what one born a human being is to do in his lifetime. Of course, for him, it meant realization. For us, it means that we lead a good life, a good spiritual life, a good family life, a good life in society, and then some contentment will come, and a life without regret, that we tried our best, and whether we achieve something or don't achieve it, that's not in our hands. This is the essence of Gita's teaching of Karma Yoga. We have no adhikara for that. That's not within our purview. That's beyond something outside of the range of what we can claim for ourselves.
Maharaj?
Yeah.
Vyakulata is restlessness or yearning for something?
Vakulata is often very much misunderstood. The real meaning is tremendous anguish. We have to be very careful if we say, "Oh, let me pray for that vakulata." Most of us will just wither away. This vakulata really means this anguish of heart, that burning, raging forest fire. What's a Thakur's example? You take a gamcha, you soak it, and how people wring it out. You've seen, I'm sure everyone has done it. Huh? You take a bath, you come out, and then you put it in the water, you wash it, you wring it out. He said it feels like the heart is being wrung like that. The heart. Huh? So it's not just that, oh, how much I long for God. No, tremendous anguish. Look at Thakur's life. He would roll in the ground till the blood would be on his face, calling mother, mother, mother. Huh? Oh, ready to kill himself, to cut his throat with a knife. Huh? That's a backward. Yeah. Yeah. So we want a little bit of it. In the gospel, very often it's translated as longing and yearning. That's part of it. But for it to really lead to God realization, it's got to be something much stronger than that. That really, your head is being held underwater. You feel you'll die if you don't get a breath of air. That type of restlessness. See, we don't look at the examples that he gives. We simply think, oh, yearning for God. Yeah.
Hair on fire.
Like your hair is on fire. Yeah, exactly. That just what will you do? Wherever you can find water to put your head in or something like that, you'll just be so restless. So that's really this Vakulata. So be very careful about praying for this Vakulata. This we see in the lives of these great saints.
Yeah.
We see in the lives of even the direct disciples. We don't see it the way we see it in the life of Thakur. I don't know of a second example, really, anything we can compare to that longing he had for the vision of Mother.
But is it also true that if you don't have Vakulata, that you're not towards the path of self-realization?
No, this is one particular type of path. If we look at the emphasis in Gita, we see nothing like that. Huh? Emphasis in Gita is more the Stita Prajna type of idea. Yeah. So there are all different types of personality types. I would say one particular type of path of bhakti, that this is it's emphasized, even if you look at all the different bhavas. We have this Panchabhava doctrine. This among the Vaishnava teachers, that most of the relationships don't involve this Vyakulata. That we look upon God as a child. It's a sweet, loving relationship, or as a friend, or the servant to the master, like Hanuman. It wasn't this tremendous longing or this restlessness or anything. It was the desire to serve and that tremendous love. It's only this Madhur Bhava, that the tremendous longing that Radha had to have the company of Sri Krishna. So it depends on the personality type, and with Sri Ramakrishna, it didn't manifest itself exactly through this Madhur Bhava, but still, that was his nature, and we don't all have that. For most of us, It'll be slow and steady, patient practice, and learning to surrender and accept and everything, and sincerely calling on God. That's all. We can't fake it. We can't pretend that, oh, reveal yourself to me or I'll kill myself. It won't do any good. Even Swamiji, this is a very interesting conversation Swamiji had with him. We read at the very end of the gospel that Swamiji says, I'm thinking of fasting for the realization of God. The man says, very good. And then what does Swamiji say? But what if I get hungry? We'll see Swamiji himself. What if I get hungry? And says, then eat something and try again. Try it again. Now, what happened with Thakur? Thakur said for 6 long years that I hardly ate anything and sleep left me completely. Can you imagine? Yeah. So it's not something that somebody decides that Thakur was like a demon possessed him, that he had no choice, he had no control over any of that. That is tremendous. Yeah, where do we see this in any other example?
Swamiji gives this example of the robber who's
Someone's in a room and he hears the gold, and even that's not strong enough. Yeah. And then day and night thinking, how do I get the gold? How do I get? But this is really a hair on fire. Yeah.
Chaitanya also had.
He also is an example. So we have 3 examples. 3 examples. Radha. Radhamani. So she's number 1. Chaitanya Deva number 2. Thakur number 3. You're right. You're right. And when the Brahmani came, she's the one who said that. Because Chaitanya Deva was always not compared to Radha, but he was supposed to be the combined incarnation. Anta Krishna, Bahir Govula. That he was supposed to be Krishna within. That means he was really Krishna, but the external manifestation, personality, and everything was like Radha. That's why his complexion was golden like Radha's complexion, and not dark like Krishna's complexion. So, in many respects, Vakulata Uddipana, another example, that these 3, Radha, Chaitanya Deva, and Sri Ramakrishna, that they had that mental makeup where something would trigger this spiritual mood. So we get all the illustrations with Radha. If she saw a dark rain cloud, or if she saw a peacock with a feather, thinking of Sri Krishna, immediately she would think of Krishna.
The tree.
She would see a tree. She would remember this is the wood that's made out of that, and the tamala, and the very dark colored wood. So all things like that. And then Chaitanya Deva, he also had that. This when he was in Puri, he would be walking by the ocean and see the water. It's ocean water, but it reminds him of Yamuna, and his tremendous longing to have that union with Krishna. And so he ends up going to the ocean and having to be pulled out. He got caught in the fisherman's net one time, and some people think that he died. That we don't know how he died actually. They never found his body. And some people think that he merged in the image from Jagannath. Other people think that maybe he drowned in the ocean. Different theories. Nobody knows exactly.
Perhaps Mirabai also.
Mirabai also. Yeah, I don't know as much about her life, but yeah, I don't know if she had. She felt that she was married to, that he was the real husband and everything. There'll be examples, of course, of others to a certain extent, but these 3, I would say, especially. And so the Brahmani felt that Sri Ramakrishna and Chaitanya Deva were one and the same. And Thakur said that many times afterwards, that, when he was young, Thakur came from the Vaishnava family, but in Bengal, there were Vaishnavas and there were Vaishnavas. There were the Vaishnavas who were the Gaudiya Vaishnavas, who were followers of Chaitanya Deva, who were really kind of completely separate. They had their own community and everything like that. And then Thakur's family, they were household deity was Raghuvir, was Rama. So they're Vaishnavas also. But Thakur says that growing up, we heard about these Vaishnavas and everything about this Chaitanya Deva, or are they just setting him up? Was he really an avatar? He had his doubts. So that was one reason he wanted to go to Navadvip, because he knew that if he went to any of these places, he would experience, if they were genuine, he would feel their divine presence there, he would know. So when he went there, he was disappointed, he didn't feel anything. And later they say that, well, maybe the river changed course in it. But anyhow, towards the end, as they were leaving, when he was on the boat, then he had that vision of these two divine young souls, that Chaitanya Deva and Nityananda. And came. This was on the Ganga, right by this Navadvip.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and so he said from that time on, and coming to know more about him, but he didn't know that much about him. It's surprising, because as I say, that wasn't the type of family he grew up in. But anyhow, he had a firm conviction that Chaitanya Deva was an avatar, and that Swamiji says, how many times I heard Thakur say that he who was Chaitanya, who was Nityananda, who was Advaita. All three are in this body, meaning Sri Ramakrishna. Thakur used to, he had a way with words. He liked to give double meanings to everything. Yeah, so he would say that Chaitanya, that means awakening. Then that gives Nityananda, so Advaita. So first Advaita, this knowledge of oneness, that will give Chaitanya awakening, and that will give eternal bliss. Nityananda. So he used to say that way. Yeah, and you remember one time one of the Brahmos was saying to Keshav in Thakur's presence, that Keshav, why not you declare yourself as Chaitanya Deva, and I don't know who it was, Shivnata or Vijay Krishna, one of them, he'll say that he's Nityananda or something. And then Keshav, he didn't take it very seriously. He pointed to Ramakrishna and said, then who is he? And then Thakur said, Das Ano Das, I am the servant of your servant, I am the dust of your feet. And then later Swamiji said, but how many times I heard him say that all three of them all together are in this body. So we find the same Bhakulata, the same Uddipana, the same enkindling, as if you get a little too close to the fire and immediately the kindling wood is so dry, immediately it flames up. So this happened in their lives. Thakur, so many times these things would happen, that when he went to the Maidan at one time and saw that English boy leaning against a tree who was bent Trivanga, immediately he thought of Krishna and it lost all outer consciousness. So this Uddipana, we don't find this quality. It's not that every realized soul will have this. These were particular things with him. We don't find it even with Holy Mother, who was equally, God realized equally a divine personality, but she was different. Thakur had his own very distinctive personality traits, spiritual personality traits. So yes, this is very important, this ananda, the bliss that follows both. So this is part of that first line. Now, he talks about these three things. This is, let's see, this is from whose come no sigh for lust or wealth or fame. So these three things, the kama, lobha, and mana. These are three of the passions. We have these these six passions. They give sometimes different. Sometimes there are the eight bonds, different things like that. But these are all the things that keep us in bondage. Now, if we think about going into solitude, that this will help us with all of them. That the desire for external things is based so much on contact with external things, the company we keep and everything like that. This is why there some verses in this Tita Prajna section. Like he said, they talk about this link, how does desire come, and frustration and all of that. Through contact with things, we see things before our own eyes. We see somebody has a brand new car. We see somebody has get this award, this honor, making a lot of. We see that, so the mind dwells on that. We don't see it, the mind won't dwell on it. It may. I mean, of course, we have some scholars, we have our tendencies and everything. But if we remove ourselves from that, then we're breaking that first chain, the first link in that chain. And lobha is greed for things. If we remove ourselves, go into solitude, then we become free from that. And there's amana. Living in the company of other people changes the way we think, the way we act, and the way we view ourselves. If you think about this. And if anybody has practiced solitude at all, then they know that it's a great relief not to have to deal with other people, not to have to put up any front, not to worry about what they think of us, not to worry about how they look upon us, none of these things. If we go into solitude, we can just breathe a sigh of relief. We don't care, are we well dressed, to be shaved, do we comb our hair, we don't care about any of that stuff. There's nobody else there. So the solitude has this added benefit that the way we look upon ourselves changes. I have a theory that when we talk about false identification with the body, that it's through the eyes of the other person. We have it, of course, with, when we have pain in the body and when we have hunger and thirst, we have it to a certain extent. But most of the time, I know when you look at me, you're seeing this physical body. I know that. You have no other way to see me. I can manifest myself personality through words a little bit. Hearing is part of it, but mostly it's the physical body. And seeing myself through your eyes, watching me, I feel this body consciousness. This in the existential terms, the existentialists talk about all of these things. They talk about the glance of the other that turns us into an object.
What?
Turns us into an object.
Oh, God.
Yeah, and you know that this became a very strong issue in the feminist movement. That men are always objectifying women, because they'll look at them and they'll only see the body, and it's a very uncomfortable feeling. Why is it uncomfortable? Partly, of course, because we know that they may be thinking all sorts of terrible things, but also because I know I'm not the body. I know it instinctively. I don't have to be a philosopher. I know that you're just looking at me as an object. I know that I'm not that. I know that I'm a person. I don't have to say I know I'm the Atman, but I know that I'm a person, that I'm not just this physical thing. So there's something demeaning about people just looking at us, objectifying us that way. I'm the subject. You can't objectify me and turn me into an object. It's demeaning. There's a certain dignity to the human character of understanding ourselves as consciousness, as a living, thinking, feeling human being. Even if it's not, I'm the witness, I'm the Atman, that's too high. But this is something that every living being can understand. You go up to anyone and you start staring at them, they'll feel uncomfortable. What are you looking at?
Yeah.
They'll feel uncomfortable. And it's partly this idea that that's not who I am. Don't turn me into an object that way. So when we go into solitude, we get to experience ourselves from the inside out, not from the outside in. In a group of people, we have this feeling that, yes, everyone is looking at me, judging me, observing me, turning me into an object to a certain extent. In solitude, we can lose that. Solitude, we can feel ourselves, yes, I'm just presence to the world. I'm just this consciousness, everything is just finding its center point in my consciousness. We can have that feeling. I love this idea of solitude. I practiced this during my school days. After joining, it's very hard to practice solitude. But all of my years in the graduate school and everything, I lived alone. And I didn't mix with people at all. I would go and spend almost all of my time just alone. And it becomes a very joyful thing. And so much so that you really find yourself avoiding the company of other people. So I was really very reclusive and antisocial in those days. That after classes, I would almost run and get back to my dumpy little room in West Philadelphia and just close it, lock the door, and just breathe a sigh of relief. Yes, me and my little shrine is there. And then sometimes I would just take the phone off the hook and just enjoy. Yes, having my own company. Most of us don't know how to enjoy our own company. Yeah. There are many people, you put them in solitude, is a horrible thing. They don't know what to do or anything. Solitude doesn't have to mean that we do nothing. We can read, we can listen to talks, everything, but no other people there. And we start to forget everything else. I remember when I traveled to India, that especially when I was, for some reason, when I was in South India, the people in India are different, all different places. I found it so interesting that in North India, that people will stare. They'll go up and I remember I went to the zoo once, and there was a group of Westerners there with long hair and very wild kind of clothes and everything. And the people there are not looking at the animals, they're looking at them as if they're part of the zoo. Then in Bengal, I found that anybody and everybody will come up and talk to you and ask you questions and this and that. And then I found in South India, people were very polite. That they wouldn't stare and they would just kind of leave you alone mostly. That for some reason, this was my experience, I may be wrong, but that was my experience. So when I was in Madras, I used to go out for long walks, and especially in the middle of the day, the heat. I used to love the heat of Madras. And I would really feel as if I didn't even have a body because people didn't look at me. Most of them, they just, I don't know, shy or polite or something like that. So I really, as if I almost kind of disappeared. And it was a very good, nice feeling. It just, and I did another interesting thing. I lived in Calcutta for 1 year, and I rented a small room in somebody's house. And I also didn't know anybody at that time. Of course, I became very close with our Institute of Culture and everything, but otherwise I lived alone. And I decided that I won't keep a mirror in the house.
Oh.
Yeah, because we look in the mirror, we say, I see myself. I don't see myself. I see the stranger staring back at me. I see a body there. So I thought, let me do an experiment. Let me go a year without seeing of course, I would go to the barber shop every once in a while and get a shave and a haircut, something like that. But otherwise, you start to feel different. You start to forget that you have this physical body. And we all start to understand the real nature of the self is consciousness. It's this light to the world, this center from which everything comes. And everything just finds its existence within consciousness. Not that it doesn't have its independent existence. This is not a metaphysical theory. It's an experiential thing that I start to feel that I'm nothing but this window to the world. I'm nothing but this consciousness in which everything gets experienced. Even this ego sense starts to disappear a little. So yeah.
2 questions. As a householder, so it's really hard to, you can meditate and have your moment of solitude, but the world just takes you on as soon as you step outside. So it just is really hard to find the extended solitude.
We have to have a balance. if we can find some time early morning. Most people, the only thing preventing them from getting up early morning is their own willpower. And of course, people get tired throughout the day. But if we can spend enough time and get established in that mood and that feeling that I am consciousness, then throughout the day, that'll linger. And even in the midst of, because I used to find that even in the midst of people, I would feel I'm just the witness, I'm just observing. Even my own body, I'm observing. So we have to set the tone early. Of course, the family life and everything, we can't maintain that all the time. Other times we try to see God in others, we take a different spiritual attitude. But if we can get established in that a little bit at the beginning of the day, early, and then in the evening again at nighttime if possible. But this solitude has to be moni, koni boni. It has to be mental for most people who have family obligations. Yes.
So when you feel that vyakulta, it's so easy to connect and it's so easy to find that that sense of oneness through your relationship. But then sometimes you just hit a dry land. You don't feel that vyakulta. You feel like, what did go wrong? Why that?
We'll get burned up if we have it all the time. Yeah, it's a good thing because we don't see. Thakur had this doctrine of adhar. He had this theory of adhar, that we're all different size receptacles. Yeah, and we're all capable of withstanding certain types of spiritual emotions. And for most of us, if we have too much of this spiritual emotion, it's like an elephant going into a small hut. It'll destroy it. That we won't be able to do it. This bhava, Thakur says, for most ordinary people, then that doesn't mean ordinary people. Most sincere devotees, they can go as far as bhava. If they go to this prema mahabhava, that they won't be able to do it. That it'll be too much for the system even. So the things like this vyakulata, if from time to time it comes, this will sustain us. We shouldn't expect it, and we won't be able to live if we have it all of the time to that extent. Unless, of course, it leads to some real breakthrough, some real God realization. We have one other example that I know. Swami Parmesanandaji, he was the Holy Mother's disciple. He had that. He had that vyakulata, and he spent day after day after day alone in their house. Right on the property, there were some small little huts and everything. So we stayed in one and did this puja worship every day and long meditation and everything. And the vyakulata was so great that he said, unless Mother reveals herself to me, I would kill myself. And he had a noose that he strung over the rafter that was all tied up, and he was going to hang himself. And sincere. And he had a vision of Mother. Yeah, but we can't do that. We can't expect to be able to do that. So if every once in a while we sit for meditation and we feel, yes, there's real longing to have some higher experience, longing to know the truth, anything like that, we should be grateful and let that sustain us. But we shouldn't expect that to last all of the time. And there'll be dry periods. We have to practice perseverance. Thakur talks about, what is it, Kandani Chasha. Those who are farmers, like generation after generation, that they're very proud of it. They big farms and everything. That they get a bad crop, they say, okay, next year it'll be okay. Those who take it up as a hobby, there's a bad crop, they give it up. So we have to be like this. In English, it says hereditary farmers. Yeah.
I have one question.
Oh, good. Okay.
You just explained to Vyakulata, right?
Yeah.
So I am asking you, when I will do puja, after puja, I will do japa. when I will japa, then the tears come to my eyes
Good,
all the time.
good.
So that tears come, this is Bakulata or this is bhakti for God. I like to know.
Doesn't matter. Thakur said, those who shed tears for God are blessed. Don't overanalyze it. Maybe you feel some joy.
Yeah, suddenly it's
Yeah,
just
yeah.
time.
Yeah, so
Understand.
that's a sign of joy. It's not tears of sadness or longing or anything. Tears of joy is a good thing.
Yeah, and I feel good.
Yeah.
When I start japa, after japa, I like to sit down and just sit down near to God. Then I feel good that time.
Yeah, Thakur, whenever he heard that any of his devotees had wept for God,
Mhm.
that he was very, very happy. Or just out of joy. Sometimes tears will come out of joy. We don't know why or how. It's a very good sign, of course.
Okay, thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Maharaj, there
Yeah.
is no time today,
Okay,
but I want to pose the question
Okay.
for our thought.
okay.
That is, on the one hand, you say that, you quote Mother saying Santosh is is a great thing to have. Contentment is a great virtue.
Yeah,
On the other hand, and you said also that after Vakulata, there should be a time toward the end of the life, say, or other time, that I am doing my best and it's okay. On the other hand, someone like me who is lazy may say, there is no point doing anything, I am happy, I mean, God will take care of it and forget my Purushaka or my activity. So there should be a solution to this contradiction.
yeah,
And you
those,
don't have to explain now, but it's up.
no, it's those who are very genuine and sincere and introspective and really know when they're making excuses for themselves and when they're really legitimately trying, they'll know the difference. And those who look back and say, yes, I really could have done more, they won't have the same type of contentment. So we have to be a little introspective and look at these things.
Thank you.
So anyhow, that very last thing, mana, this desire for praise. This is something that's also a great obstacle in spiritual life. And with one of the last things, we find it even with spiritual people, that they'll be very happy if people admire them. Whether it's praise or not praise, but at least this desire, it means that we still have this identification with this ego sense and everything. So if we can get rid of these three things, this kama, lobha, mana that are mentioned here in that very first verse, that whose calm no sigh for lust or wealth or fame. Yeah, Swamiji had such fame when he came back that he used to write. Do you know that when he wrote in the West, when I was in the West, that people would revile me, I couldn't stay in any nice hotel, nothing. When I come to India, do you know, princes will unhook the horses and themselves pull at the chariot that I'm on. So much fame. He didn't care in the least for it. He didn't like it even. And what was the first thing he did when he came back? He handed everything over to Swami Brahmananda and said, you'll be the president, you'll be in charge. I want to let go of all of this. So he was perfectly free from all of that. Nobody was lionized, and then no sannyasi at least was ever lionized in the history of India the way he was when he came back from the West. Okay.